rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events, this is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. So I've got a lot to talk about tonight. Also, too, unfortunately, while it is Whiskey Wednesday, you guys will be partaking on your own because I have to actually drive after the show. So I take drinking and driving very kind of seriously. So, as anyone should, you should never drink and drive. So I won't be partaking, but that's okay. You guys go right ahead, provided that you're, not driving. Anyway, so there you go. All right, let's go ahead and get things kicked off. Tonight's pledge is going to be performed by Pops McGroin and partner. So if you don't mind, please stand, remove your hats if you're wearing one, like me. And place your hand over your heart and join in with Pops and his partner in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America.
And, of course, I thank you, Pops and partner, for that wonderful rendition. If you would like to hear your rendition of the pledge played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself performing the pledge in your style, whether that's an audio file or a video file. Take that file, attach it to an email, send it off to me. Send it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will get you into the rotation. And now, of course, here, thanks, Becky. Appreciate that. Of course, it is
down to business.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
It's Whiskey Wednesday. It's like Taco Tuesday, but for badasses. All right. And tonight's sponsor is, as soon as I can figure out which button I'm supposed to push for this. Yeah, there we go. TGRN, True Grit Roots Network on tgrn.net. Now, I kind of announced it last night, but I'm going to go ahead and do it again tonight. Ooh, I got myself covered up. That's cool. Don't know if anybody knows this band right here, Dallas Moore. That's right. It's Dallas Moore. And he is joining with TGRN in a partnership to where what we have is Dallas Moore, his Outlaw Radio is what's coming. Dallas Moore's Outlaw Radio. Now, this is it was similar to, as far as the partnership is concerned, it's similar to the Walter Trout Blues Rock Radio. This will be a more focused on a country southern rock kind of channel, paying tribute to, of course, some of the greats that are out there, like Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, and then, of course, Lynyrd Skynyrd is another one that I can think of right off the top of my head. But Dallas Moore's Outlaw Radio is where we are going to go with our new channel. Now, the new channel will debut on April 7th. Okay. It will debut on April 7th. And right after that, I should say, right after that, we are going to have two launch parties. One will be April 9th, right here, as you can see on the screen, at Green Hall in New Braunfels, Texas. And that's April 9th at 8:30. Now, you can go to dallasmoore.com and take a look at this. This is under his tour dates, okay? So go to dallasmoore.com, go to tour, and you'll find these dates. This is one of two launch parties that we are going to do, and I am planning on being at both of them. So if you are in Texas and want to come out and congratulate us on our partnership, or congratulate TGRN, I should say, on its partnership with Dallas Moore, and of course come see me, you can come by and stop by and listen to the concerts. So the other one is on April 13th, which is a Sunday, in Luckenbach, Texas. And that one's at 2 p.m. That one's probably the better, potentially the better one to go to for most people, because Wednesday's kind of tough. I get it. But you can, if you live in Texas and you want to come see a great concert, and of course support TGRN along with myself, come by. And both on April 9th or April 13th, I will be at both of them. Or I'm planning on being at both of them. The Luckenbach, Texas one is in Fredericksburg. And once again, that's on the 13th. And April 9th is at Green Hall. In New Braunfels. So there you go. And that is an appearance that I will be making on that. So that is TGRN. Now, you'll be able to go to tgrn.net soon here and get some more details. I haven't gotten the website quite up and running yet, but expect to hear more in the next week or so with more details on what's going on. But if you go to tgrn.net, that's our home on the web, tgrn.net, and you'll be able to get more information, and then of course be able to listen to both of our channels once they get turned on, right there in the browser. Or what you can do is you can download the apps. There'll be links for both apps. And you'll be able to download the apps, or you'll be able to find both channels in either the Live 365 app or the AUDACY Odyssey app or the iHeartRadio app. You'll be able to look all three of them, look us up in all three of those as well once we get things going. But that's what's coming. It was announced here not that long ago. We had Jonathan Oogie Richards over there, and he came on, and you remember we had that interview with him, and he sort of teased it, but now you know. It's Dallas Moore Outlaw Radio. DMOR is what the letters are going to be, but Dallas Moore Outlaw Radio, and there you go. So that is the big announcement for TGRN, and of course for me too. You'll be able to meet the gang, the TGRN gang, and everything else all over. And by the way, I see over here in the chat there some of my southern fans, like Buddy Weiser, is saying, I'm going to melt in Texas. 1990 to 1994, I was in Texas. I know about the heat. I don't like it, but I'm not going to melt. Especially not in April. If it was August, that would be something different, but I don't think so in April. So Bonnie, yeah, you too. Sorry, but I'm not going to melt. All right. Speaking of melting and melting down, by the way, we have melting and melting down. We have the leftists that are melting down. They are melting down over a lot of different things going on. The first one, of course, has to deal with the fact that Donald Trump has cut 50%, nearly 50% of the staff in the Department of Education. So he's finally doing what he's finally doing what Republicans all the way since Reagan, honestly. I mean, Reagan talked about getting rid of it. But all the way since Reagan, and yeah, they are melting down, especially Randi Weingarten, who is she's a freaking, she's a mess. Anyway, she's the union rep, I think, for all of the teachers, and yeah, she's just she goes nuts. She goes nuts on this whole thing. And well, here, I mean, let's go ahead and just take a listen to her.
Department of Education going away. Linda McMahon confirmed as much that's happening. There's not a set time frame on that. But
many people are so mad about it because they're just taking opportunity away from kids that don't have it. So billionaires, kids of billionaires, they have it. They go to private schools. Everyone else, 90%, go to public schools. Don't take away their opportunity.
So let's stay on the facts.
Sorry,
no,
I'm really angry about this.
No, because this
I'm
is what
really
people
angry.
need to hear.
I taught kids in Clara Barton High School in Brooklyn, New York.
But why are you angry, Randy? R-A-N-D-I, Randy. I mean, because honestly, this to me.
So the gentleman that's speaking, I'm not exactly sure. It seems to be a podcast of some kind. Oh, no, it's Dean Rehnquist, I think. But anyway, Randi Weingarten is just livid about this whole thing. And she unfortunately keeps talking about how this is going to take away education opportunities from kids. She doesn't seem to understand that we did just fine with taxes, state taxes, local taxes going directly to the education of each individual state. And yeah, prior to 1970 something, when Carter decided to create the Department of Education. Yeah. Anyway, I actually think, and some other people are suggesting this, is that she's upset because it means that the federal government will no longer be funding the unions. Anyway, so yeah, it has nothing to do with any of this. The kids' education, they will survive, I promise. And not to mention the fact, but she also was a little upset. By the way, she was a little upset over the idea that Texas is going to automatically turn over to student vouchers, meaning that the students can actually leave the failing public school system with their tax dollars that are allocated for them and take them to other schools that are much more successful. And she's pissed about that. You got to kind of wonder why. Got to ask that question, why? Why is she so upset about this? I mean, you would think if she was so interested in the education of children that she would, advocate for things like school vouchers and those kinds of programs. You would think that she would advocate for that. But unfortunately, that's not quite the case that's going on here. in this particular scenario. You gotta love it. But anyway, let's go back a little bit and talk slightly about the USAID. So USAID is another one that got cut drastically by the Doge team, got ripped on for quite some time. Anyway, who was it? Somebody got a hold of a document that came out, or an email, I should say, not a document, but an email that came out that advocates for getting rid of a bunch of classified information and personnel documents from the Ronald Reagan building for USAID. Like, wait a minute. What? Yeah, check this out. Here, this is from Autism Capital X account. USAID is telling people to prepare for an all-day shredding event. Now, this event was supposed to be for yesterday, to burn and shred all of USAID documents. Well, you can see the copy of the email right here. Somebody obviously took a photo of it on a computer. And the thing says, "Good afternoon. Thank you for your assistance in clearing our classified safes and personnel documents from the RRB," which is the Ronald Reagan building. "The event will take place all day tomorrow, March 11th, beginning at 9:30 a.m. Please meet at the lobby at 9:30. However, if you cannot be there at the exact time, your badge will be programmed for access to your work area." This is where it goes on. "Shred as many documents first and reserve the burn bags for when the shredder becomes unavailable or needs a break." Now, wait a minute. Why would a government agency, well, this is a non-governmental organization, but why would a government-funded agency, actually, no, I'm sorry, this is USAID and it was created under Kennedy. I misspoke. But why would a government agency need to all of a sudden start shredding stuff? What? Anyway, it says, if you need to use the burn bag, do not overfill and ensure the burn bag can be closed with the staples at the top. It says, the only labeling required on the burn bags are the words secret and USAID in dark Sharpie if possible. If you need additional burn bags or Sharpie markers, please let me or the Secretary InfoSec team, the SEC InfoSec team know. So what is it that they're doing here? Realistically, what is it that they're doing? Why do they need to all of a sudden burn documents? I mean, the federal government, honestly, keeps everything. They have records, okay, going way, way back past like World War II. They have records, they keep everything. So why would a government agency want to all of a sudden do this? Now, I can tell you that U.S. embassies, the people guarding those embassies have, and those that are in the embassies have orders that if they're going to be overrun, they must shred or burn, in particular, all kinds of documents in order to protect the classified information that is inside. Well, kind of interesting sort of thing that they would do this. Just has a question. And I'm not the only one, by the way, that is questioning this. There's other people that are questioning this, including the mainstream media. Take a listen.
NBC News is reporting this. USAID staff is being told to shred and burn all their classified documents. Quote, the U.S. Agency for International Development is instructing its staff in Washington to shred and burn documents, according to an email obtained by NBC News. The document destruction was set to take place Tuesday, according to an email from Erica Carr, the agency's acting executive secretary. Quote, shred as many documents first and reserve the burn bags for when the shredder becomes unavailable or needs a break, Carr wrote. I worked in government for almost a decade. I've never heard of so much shredding being required that you would know ahead of time that, quote, the shredder would become unavailable or need a break. What is that about?
Right. I actually this morning got a message from somebody who left USAID earlier this year and passed along this email to me, and my response was naturally, is this standard operating procedure? And this individual said no, that they had never heard about burning or shredding of federal records at USAID. But then again, this individual told me they've never heard of the entire agency being gutted and their headquarters at the Ronald Reagan building being shut down. When are documents, burned by the State Department or USAID? Typically at an embassy, when it is about to be overtaken, Marines have the authorization as a means of ensuring that classified records and personnel data do not get in the hands of individuals who are seen as threats. They do go and burn documents, but that's not what this situation is here.
That's quite an interesting conundrum question. Something? Yeah. So why are they burning? What's the point for them to be burning those documents? That's a darn good question. Well, it's a question that may get answered in court. That's right. According to the Associated Press, the court has been asked to intervene after that email was sent out for the workers to destroy classified documents. Interesting. So Judge Carl Nichols set a Wednesday morning deadline, that would have been this morning, for the plaintiffs and the government to brief him on the issue. A person familiar with the email who spoke on the condition of anonymity, that's hard to say, forget it, for fear of reprisal, verified that it was sent to at least some essential personnel. Now, of course, lawsuits are mounting over the abrupt shutdown of most of these U.S. foreign assistance and the targeting of the aid agency. The latest court challenge, Personnel Services Contractor Association, representing thousands of contractors who are now furloughed or fired from USAID, have asked the judge to stop any document destruction to preserve evidence. It's interesting because if you recall, the court stepped in and told the Trump administration, you can't just stop funding contracts in particular with these people, these contractors. You can't just stop funding these contracts that have already been completed. And so the court was basically forced, and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to do anything about it, but basically forced the government to pay what was owed to these contractors. So these contractors are attempting to make sure that their records are not going to be destroyed as a part of this entire destruction scenario. Quite interesting. So anyway, that email, by the way, was sent under the name of Erica Carr, who was the acting executive secretary at USAID. So, Representative Gregory Meeks, who is the ranking Democrat of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, accused the Trump administration of not complying with federal records law. He said, haphazardly shredding and burning USAID documents and personnel files seems like a great way to get rid of evidence of wrongdoing when you're illegally dismantling the agency. Well, first of all, Trump isn't illegally dismantling the agency. It was created by an executive order under the State Department, under Kennedy, I believe. Yes, under Kennedy. So he's not dismantling it illegally, although that's what the Dems seem to think. Not to mention the fact that USAID is actually a Democrat-run, Democrat-controlled government agency, that in some cases have been called out for potential money laundering. I mean, just to give you an idea of some of the grants that the agency itself has dispersed to the foreign companies, okay? According to a summary from the White House, $1.5 million for DEI in Serbia, $6 million to boost Egypt's tourist trade, $47,000 for a transgender opera mounted in Colombia, $32,000 for what was described as a transgender comic book to be published in Peru, and $2 million for sex change operations for the citizens of Guatemala. Now, again, I'm going to just point to the Constitution and say, where are all of those items in Article 1, Section 8, as a responsibility of the United States federal government? The answer is, it's not there. So, anyway, we're going to have to kind of take a look at this in particular. Now, the federal court that ordered the Trump administration to pay out only targeted $671 million that was already owed to contractors that have completed the projects for the agency. But it appears that the courts recognize the administration's authority to shut the agency down after making good on its back bills. So there you go. Anyway, very, very interesting turn of events in terms of USAID. But again, I go back to the idea. Well, why would they have the need? Why do they think they would need to burn those documents or shred those documents? Just doesn't seem to make sense to me, unless there's something to hide, which is possible. Speaking of hiding, the Biden administration and the Biden FBI, was failing to comply with congressional subpoenas for certain records. And now, because of Kash Patel being in charge, here, according to Red State, the FBI just turned over to the Republican-run House GOP docs that the FBI, Biden FBI, wouldn't send over, including January 6th pipe bomb case files. So the House Judiciary Committee has been trying to get answers on these, and they previously subpoenaed the Biden FBI for documents in multiple cases. They've now subpoenaed the new bureau, headed up by Kash Patel. And the new team responded to the subpoena a week before the deadline that was originally given to them by the committee. The FBI produced hundreds of pages of subpoenaed material to the House Judiciary Committee related to Republicans' past investigations after committee members said they never received them from the Biden administration. That's interesting. An FBI assistant director wrote in a letter obtained on Monday by the Washington Examiner to the Republican-led committee that the tranche of documents was related to the FBI's inquiries into threats to school administrators, the pipe bombs near the Capitol on January 6th, and the violent extremists' alleged ties to a particular faction of Catholicism. They also included material related to the FBI's engagement with social media companies about foreign influence in the 2020 election. We're going to have to see what goes on here. Well, the FBI Assistant Director Marshall Yates wrote to the committee chair Jim Jordan that turning over the documents was about restoring trust and being transparent. Yates also appeared to indicate they would be providing more information in the future. The committee spokesperson, Russell Dye, expressed his thanks and said they would have more updates. So, yeah. Of course, the suggestion in the article that is the committee is likely to get a lot more cooperation from Patel than he got from Christopher Wray. So there you go. Now, keep in mind, of course, we still have the Epstein documents from Attorney General Pam Bondi. So it's hold, take a deep breath, and hold on some of this stuff because, yeah, some of this is definitely going to be interesting if it ever comes to full light. But we'll just have to kind of see what happens and what moves on in terms of the major piece out of all of this. All right. So, some good news that I told you yesterday from on the money front. All right. And by that, I mean the price of eggs. The price of eggs coming down to an average, or coming down an average of $1.85 for it. And so anyway, inflation, apparently, at least according to sources, has dropped a little bit from January to February. It went from roughly a little over 3% down to 2.8%. Here, in this CNBC report, the inflation breakdown for February 2025 in one chart. Now, inflation receded on the back of easing price pressures for consumer staples like gasoline, groceries, and housing. Now, what's really funny about all this is Elizabeth Warren, I caught this just as I was coming on. She posted on X that prices were still up. Housing prices were still up. Grocery prices were still up. Gas prices were still up. And yet here we have CNBC saying, no, things are actually dropping. Consumer Price Index rose 2.8% for the 12 months that ended in February, because keep in mind, it's a year-over-year check. Okay. So it's down from 3% that happened in January. Now, here's the inflation breakdown according to them in one singular chart, and we'll go through this here. So overall, for all the items, inflation was 2.8%. For food at home, it went to 1.9%. Now, keep in mind, that is actually mostly driven by the price of eggs, okay, which you see right there next to my head. But the total is, it's getting less and less year over year. Now, keep in mind, this is not from 4 years ago. This is just from the year prior. So we got to keep that in mind. All right. But as you can see, things like beef roasts, instant coffee, they've got it all broken out here, but the food at home overall total is 1.9%. Food away from home has risen at 3.7%. Energy is actually dropping. That's right here. Energy lost 0.2% between gas and electricity. All items minus food and energy have also, let's see, they're still rising at 3.1%. But again, the idea here is that overall inflation has dropped a couple of points, or couple of tenths of a percentage point. So, yeah. This is something that, of course, the left is not going to like. They're not going to like this at all in terms of this. So, good news on the horizon. Same thing, too. Keep in mind that the same thing as well with regards to the whole manufacturing, the jobs report showing that manufacturing actually increased jobs for the way that works. So anyway. All right. So let's get into the main topic for tonight. There's a report out that not a lot of people are taking note of. It's from the Treasury. And the Treasury report supports what Elon Musk was talking about in regards to federal deficits sinking the United States. So you have to ask the question, is the U.S. actually poorer than what and in more trouble than what is being relayed through our all of our news media? That's the question. Because Elon Musk recently talked about how rich people should be caring more about federal deficits because, quote, if the ship of America sinks, we all sink with it. Okay. And now this may seem like he's talking about hyperbole here, but based on this report from the Treasury, which was quietly released last month, or well, this is March now, so quietly released in January, shows that if the federal government reported its finances in the same way that large corporations are required by law to report theirs, we might have a bigger problem than what we think. This article is out by one of my favorite sites, Just the Facts Daily. Okay. And this article by James Agnesti, I think that's right. He outlines that the Treasury report mentions or shows, I should say, that the primary measure of federal red ink usually is the national debt, which right now is showing at 36 trillion plus. But in reality, if you go by the way that the law requires corporations to report their income and their finances, the American public would be a little freaked out because this report demonstrates $143 trillion in debts, liabilities, and unfunded obligations. Now, they did an analysis on this, and this figure at $143 trillion, it's a hard number to swallow. I mean, 36 trillion is one, but 143 trillion? Anyway, equals roughly 85% of all of the wealth that Americans have accumulated since the nation's founding. So this is almost 250 years worth 85% of almost 250 years worth of money being brought in. And by the way, it also equates to an average burden of $1.1 million on every household in the nation. Okay, so how does this really break down? Well, it goes into the piece. It kind of talks about it. It says that the Treasury published the annual report that details the government's overall financial position. In addition to the national debt, okay, the financial report of the United States government also includes the government's explicit and implicit financial commitments, such as federal employee pensions and other retirement benefits like health care, environmental liabilities like the contaminated nuclear sites that are out there, unfunded obligations for social insurance programs like Medicare and Social Security. Okay. So these are what's called fiscal exposures, as explained by the U.S. Government Accountability Office, and represent significant commitments that ultimately would have to be addressed. Therefore, the GAO stresses that ignoring them can make it difficult for policymakers and the public to adequately understand the government's overall performance and true financial condition. Okay. Now, this report was published on January 16th. And at least according to the writer, Google indicates that no prominent politician or major media outlet has actually talked about it at all. So this is why I asked the question. So here's the thing, okay? A methodical tally of the accrual accounting data in the Treasury report shows that the federal government has amassed $143 trillion in debts, liabilities, and unfunded obligations that are beyond the value of any assets that it has. And this is reflected based off of the government's finances at the close of the 2024 fiscal year, which ended in September. So the primary components right now is the $28.3 trillion held in publicly held in national debt. Now that's not the actual national debt, but that's what's publicly held, meaning that the individuals, individuals, corporations, state governments, foreign governments that are out there, okay? The $17.2 trillion in liabilities that are not accounted for in the publicly held debt, and this is the big one, $105.8 trillion in unfunded social insurance obligations. That's where your Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare come from. All right. So again, that's, $105 trillion that are unfunded. And here's how it's breaking it down. So pension and other retirement benefits are a large part of compensation packages. And it's with the generous benefits included, civilian non-postal federal employees receive an average of 17% more total compensation than private sector workers with comparable education and work experience. Postal workers themselves actually receive even greater premiums, ranging from 25 to 43%. Okay. But here's the thing. The Treasury reports other liabilities of the federal government, such as $134 billion alone in accounts payable, meaning that's stuff what has to be paid and hasn't been. $666 billion, ooh, that's a bad number, in environmental and disposal liabilities, and $106 billion in insurance and guarantee program liabilities. So altogether, that comprises the $17.2 trillion in liabilities that are not even accounted for in the actual debt, publicly held debt. So Social Security and Medicare, which by the way is a pay-as-you-go program, meaning that the money that's being put in by workers today, people who are working right now, is basically not being saved like what a lot of people seem to think, the way that it was originally intended. It's not being sucked away to pay for that or to be drawn against like a savings account, which again was the original intent. It's not doing that at all. So federal law, according to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysts, explains that federal law requires that private pension plans operate as funded plans, which basically means that the money is allocated and held, not pay as you go, which is where we're at with our Social Security. Okay? Now, here's the thing. And this is really where you're going to see here in a few charts, okay? The government itself does have some federal assets. It has roughly, according to the Treasury records, $1.2 trillion in cash and other monetary assets, $1.3 trillion in property, plants, and equipment, and $1.8 trillion, which is in receivable loans. Now, here's the kicker. Mainly comprised of student loans. And Joe Biden wanted to forgive those. That was an asset. That is a federal asset. Anyway. So, in total, the government itself estimated that it owned $5.7 trillion in commercial assets at the close of its 2024 fiscal year. So, yeah. Gold and silver, according to the laws that require it to assess gold at 42.22 cents per ounce and silver at $42.22 an ounce and silver at $1.29 an ounce, which are actually small fractions of market prices. Okay. Property, plant, and equipment is the cost of purchasing these items. And then, of course, it needs to depreciate them over time, which is pretty much what any corporation does. But that fails to account for inflation and appreciation of any kind of assets such as land. So this number, the 5.7 trillion, might be off, but it still doesn't offset the $143 trillion that we could be in debt for. Now, they did go through and take a look at like the gold and silver. Trying to use the market value is extremely tough, but and you can't generalize it, basically. But they estimate, Just Facts estimates that the federal government may have about 2.2 trillion more in assets than the Treasury reported. So that means that we have just under 8 trillion in commercial assets. Even with gold and silver, if it was sold off at the same prices, as an asset, to gain back money from that. So now there's no way that adds up to 143 trillion of the government's debts, liabilities, and unfunded obligations. Okay. So here is a chart that shows the current expenditures, and it goes back in time, but this is the current expenditures and receipts. The expenditures are the dark, heavy maroon line. The receipts is the dashed kind of greenish line underneath it. And as you can see, it goes from the Great Depression all the way into World War II, which you see is the huge spike that's far off on the other side of the page from me. And then you can see how it sort of kind of has leveled off, and then in through from starting in 1971 roughly, how the expenditures kind of went up, and at the same time that the receipts sort of stayed relatively stagnant. And then you see this one spot in, let's say, the late 90s, early 2000s, where the expenditures actually dropped below the receipts for that particular year. And then you'll see how the expenditures in the Great Recession, what they call the Great Recession, so that's the Obama years, and then, of course, COVID-19 is right above, kind of just above my head. But you can see for the Biden administration how expenditures just popped up from COVID-19. So now let's take a look at the government current expenditures by function. Well, this tells you all you need to know, because as I was telling you the other night, social programs is our biggest expenditure. And this is what this chart demonstrates right here. So the dark black line that you see is social programs. Then you have a kind of a dotted line, which is orange or orangish, maybe a little more red, which is national defense and veterans benefits, which comes in down. And then, of course, you have things like public order and safety, which is way down at the bottom, or economic affairs, which is way down at the bottom, or general government and debt service, which is toward the bottom, and only makes up roughly, well, those four make up less than 20% of all of our spending. And yet social programs makes up the other roughly 60% of government spending. This is why our government is in such a dire straits, folks. And keep in mind, the only thing that is really on this chart, okay, honestly, that I would say, generally speaking, would line up with anything in Article 1, Section 8. Public order and safety would be there. National defense and veterans benefits. You can argue the veterans benefits, but definitely the national defense is in there. General government and debt service, depending upon what makes that up, that could possibly fit. But those social programs that are taking up over 60 to almost 70% at times of our spending is the problem. And yet nobody wants to touch it. Yeah. Anyway, it's totally all of our money and everything that we've been doing has just been increasing in spending. And as you can see, based on the time down below on the bottom, you can see it started rising in 1965, then to 73. Then you can see 80 and 87 and 90, 94, and it just kept going up from there. So, this is really kind of the problem. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get rid of it. At least not until the government actually, and the people in the government actually decide to do something about it. And that's part of the problem, because they are not going to do it. So, the Government Accountability Office, by the way, does say, in contrast to those who allege that the U.S. government can spend and borrow with abandon because it can't, or because it can print money, okay, the Government Accountability Office warns that the costs of federal borrowing will be borne by tomorrow's workers and taxpayers, which may reduce or slow growth of the living standards of future generations. Yeah. Yep. So we may actually already be feeling some of the effects of this. So yeah. Anyway, we might be further in debt than what we think. We might be further in debt than what we actually think about all this. I'm telling you, folks, something's going to have to be done with those social programs. And I know it's kind of, I'm seeing in the chat, you know, some people are like, you know, we've heard this already. Well, it's a big deal, folks. I'm sorry, but the social programs that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security is not a proper use of federal taxpayer dollars. And they're going insolvent. They're going to go insolvent unless something is done about them. Well, speaking of having something done about them, the government shutdown is looming on Friday. Now, I told you last night that the House passed a 7-month, 6-month, 7-month spending bill in order to keep the quote-unquote doors open on the government. Now, that has gone to the Senate for approval. They haven't voted on it yet, though. And here, as you can see in Politico, they're actually trying to figure out how they can stop the government and shut it down, because they look at it as, if we shut it down, that's going to be Trump's fault and the Republicans' fault. So according to Politico, Dems are searching for a shutdown strategy. Now, here's the thing. Because this is not a reconciliation bill, okay, it requires a filibuster-proof majority, meaning 60 votes in the Senate. We need to pick up 8. We need to pick up 8 Democrats, okay? We need to pick up 8 Democrats in the Senate in order to pass this special funding bill. Now, a lot of people are kind of like on Tom Massey's side, you know, we shouldn't be passing this special funding bill. Well, in reality, okay, the reality of it is this, that if we pass this, then we can start addressing some of the things that Donald Trump wants to do. At least that's the thought process and the theory about the whole thing. Okay. Well, here's the thing. We actually only need 7, because apparently John Fetterman, here in Politico again, John Fetterman has already said that he's going to vote with Republicans for this. Now, Mark Kelly, Senator Mark Kelly, who is I don't like him. Anyway, he told reporters that he remains undecided on this stopgap funding bill, and asked when he was going to make up his mind. According to reporters, he said before the end of the yet-to-be-scheduled vote. Tim Kaine also didn't rule out voting for the bill during a brief interview that he had, but said that he's in talks with leadership trying to secure amendment votes. And Chris Coons said he will not help to pass the bill. He says, I do not want to shut down our government. I want to improve it, streamline it, and ensure it delivers services our communities need, he said in a statement. Well, I don't think this stopgap spending bill is actually going to pass the Senate. At least not in the initial things. Now, the Senate Democrats were supposed to meet today, this afternoon, earlier today, for a closed-door lunch to discuss their strategy ahead of the shutdown deadline for it. And this is according to Politico's Jordan Carney and Joe Gold. They write, they face growing pressure from the left flank of their party to oppose the House bill But it's not clear if any Plan B could pass in time to avoid a shutdown. House GOP leaders adjourned the chamber on Tuesday night, with members not due to return to Washington until March 24th. So, yeah. Yep. This is going to be interesting. My guess right now, honestly, is if the Dems don't get on board, which they don't seem to be, right now it doesn't seem likely, they are more than likely going to, quote unquote, shut down the government. Now, remember what I told you last night. Shutting down the government does not include shutting down essential services, which is what the Democrats and their sycophantic followers keep talking about in terms of not being able to get Social Security checks or any of those kinds of things. There's a lot of essential services that will stay open. So a government shutdown, it's technically not a government shutdown, regardless of what what the mainstream media talks about in terms of a government shutdown. Now, I don't know specifically what things will stay open and operational. But yeah. So we'll have to see what happens. But I have a feeling, again, that the left is going to shut it down and then blame it on the Republicans. So, anyway, okay. Really quickly here, I've got a little bit of time. So remember that tragic crash that happened on January 29th out at Reagan International Airport with the military helicopter and the airplane that was the passenger airplane that was trying to land. Well, apparently the NTSB has come up with some recommendations for them, for the FAA to go ahead and make some changes in terms of that particular airport. And it looks like the FAA is going to do it. So here in the Epic Times, the FAA orders permanent restrictions on helicopter route near the Washington airport. So if you recall, there is a route, there's a couple of routes that helicopters fly on that are flying basically right underneath or near the runways of 15 and 33. In particular, for some strange reason, the 15 or the plane that was landing reportedly was headed toward runway 15, but then got diverted to go to 33 for some strange reason. Still I personally haven't heard what the reasoning behind that was, but it got diverted to 33, and that's what helped to set up the situation. Now, the helicopter was flying higher than what it is supposed to on what is known as Route 4. Okay. And so this particular recommendation by the NTSB is, and this is a preliminary investigation report, by the way, is basically to keep some restrictions in place along the two corridors, meaning that Route 4, and especially that that it makes it to where the route itself is shut down while flights are landing or departing on 15 and 33. So the NTSB said in a statement, Jennifer Homendy, chair of the NTSB, said in a news conference announcing the preliminary report, quote, "We've determined that the existing separation distances between helicopter traffic operating on Route 4 and aircraft landing on runway 33 are insufficient and pose an intolerable risk to aviation safety. We remain concerned about the significant potential for a future mid-air collision at DCA, which is why we are recommending a permanent solution today. We believe a critical safety issue must be addressed without delay. Now, Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy announced on March 11th, which is yesterday, that the agency would implement the safety measures laid out by the NTSB. So, 3 Chevy is telling me that there were some crosswinds on 15, and so that caused the plane to get diverted to 33 that night. So, anyway. And Duffy, of course, confirmed that the FAA will fully adopt those recommendations. Speaking at a separate press conference, Duffy said that earlier in the day he had discussed with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth establishing an alternative route for military operations around the restricted airspace at DCA. Now, remember, the area at Reagan International has to go over the restricted airspace that is DC itself. So, yeah, they have some interesting routes. I've flown into Reagan, I think, once or twice in my time of flying. And, yeah, it's kind of interesting how they have to shift and change and all these other things in terms of where they're heading. So, Duffy stated at that press conference, at best, we're in a situation where we're threading a needle, allowing helicopters to fly down the same airspace as landing aircraft. He continued and asks why this information wasn't studied and known before January 29th is an important question. But based on that information and this crash, we are going to continue with our restrictions on Route 4 here. So the NTSB's recommendations were based in part of a review of flight data, which revealed thousands of instances. Thousands of instances in recent years where airplanes and helicopters came dangerously close to one another near DCA. The report noted that from 2011 to 2024, at least once a month, airplane pilots received what's called urgent alerts, which are known as resolution advisories, warning them to take emergency action to avoid colliding with helicopters. In more than half of those near misses, the helicopters may have been flying above the permitted altitudes for that route. And 2/3 of the reported incidences occurred at night. There you go. So, yep. Homendy also pointed out on March 11th that the FAA had access to that same voluntary safety reporting data that the NTSB used for its analysis, by the way. She said they could have used that information at any time to determine that we have a trend here and a problem here and taken a look at that route. And that part didn't occur. So the FAA under Biden, and realistically Trump before, but the FAA apparently wasn't necessarily paying attention to what was happening here with this entire situation. Unfortunately, it cost the lives of 67 people. 3 Chevy. Can you imagine if we all had flying cars? Yeah. Yeah, that would be a bit of a problem. I mean, accidents on the road are bad enough. Just imagine what happens with the, yeah. And Coco, of course, caught my getting stuck between helicopters and airplanes. Anyway. Well, before I get into the pet of the week, there was one other kind of interesting. Now, okay, first of all, before I show you this video, I'm going to kind of cue this up. Do I think that this was appropriate for either party to have gotten into this? Honestly, no. But they went ahead and did anyway. And this is just demonstrating how, shall we say, remotely moronic some of the people in our government. I mean, this is where they're going with something like this. Really. You guys are going to get into arguments over something like this. It's just, yeah, anyway. So there was a hearing on Capitol Hill. And it was a House hearing, and it was abruptly cut short on Tuesday after a Democrat representative, Bill Keating from Massachusetts, confronted the chairperson, Republican Representative Keith Self of Texas, because Representative Self didn't use the proper, or what Bill Keating thought was the proper introduction for Tim/Sarah McBride, who is the first transgender member of Congress. Well, yeah, let's just see how badly this thing went off. I can't even imagine why these people are just anyway. Here, take a listen.
I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Keating, also wonderful.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat your introduction again, please?
Yes, we have set the standard on the floor of the House, and I'm simply...
What is that standard, Mr. Chairman? Would you repeat what you just said when you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America, please?
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this.
You will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
This hearing is adjourned.
Yeah. This is who we elected, folks. Honestly, this is who we've elected. Now, reportedly, after the hearing, they basically, like I said, like it showed, Self attempted to move forward with it. Keating refused to proceed, and Self ended the hearing. So to kind of bring you up to this, that what Self was attempting to try and follow was the resolution that Nancy Mace introduced, where it was originally to ban biological men from using women's restrooms within the Capitol complex. Okay. Now, that, of course, was suggested to be a move that came in direct response to McBride being elected. Okay. Well, following that resolution, Speaker Mike Johnson implemented a rule which Self alluded to in that, and that was requiring that all single-sex facilities in the Capitol and House office buildings be reserved for individuals of that biological sex. McBride, by the way, has publicly stated that they'll comply with the rule, or he, she, whatever, will comply with the rule. Okay. McBride said, quote, "I'm not here to fight about bathrooms. I'm here to fight for Delawareans." Is that what they're called? Anyway, Delawareans to bring down costs facing families. So the House, by the way, has not yet issued a formal response to this dispute. How ridiculous. We've got so many more things to be focused on, and this is what they're going to choose? I mean, really? Anyway. Yeah, I know. A lot of people are like over this foolishness. That's what Buddy says, but I'll be honest with you, it's not going to go away anytime soon. I'm just telling you, it's not going to go away anytime soon. All right. Well, let's end the night on a good note. Okay, on a really good note, because we have a pet, well, pets of the week. All right, everybody here loves Three Chevy's koi pond. Okay? And, well, let's just put it this way. Three Chevy loves his fish. He's put a lot of work into that thing. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. I laugh about it, but my gosh, I can't imagine. I mean, that must be like he must have like hundreds of thousands of dollars into that thing. Just absolutely gorgeous. But anyway, he apparently sent me this, and this is fantastic. So here's the story, and then we'll get to the photos afterward. He says, "Hey, Rick, my wife and I went to the annual Central Florida Koi Show, and I thought you might like to see what serious koi look like. The larger ones are worth several $1,000s, okay? And they are judged, and prizes are awarded for different types of fish. They also have some fish for sale, along with all the food, filters, and other things that normal dealers would carry. I took some pictures of a few of the larger ones to show you what they look like, and also some pictures of the much smaller ones that we got. Mary got 2 little ones for free from a dealer we know, and she picked out the 4 that are in the blue bucket. You'll see the pictures here in just a few minutes. I told her any color but orange, as we already have too many of those. And then he apparently picked up 2 Chinese high fin sharks that are supposed to be good for eating algae, and they should get to be about a foot long. He says, hope you enjoy these. And he signed it off, of course, 3 Chevy. So let's go ahead and take a look. By the way, I have a video in here as well. But I can't even imagine $1,000 for a fish. Well, here, let me show you what this looks like. And let's go right here. There's one of those fish. That thing must be, I mean, holy crap. That thing's huge. Now, I'm assuming that they have some connection to goldfish, because that's all I've ever really looked at them as, is goldfish. But yeah, that thing is like just enormous. Here we go with some of the smaller ones. Obviously, they have the net over the top to keep them from jumping out. But let's continue with some of these photos. There's a couple of the big ones. A couple more of the big ones. And there's another one. That thing, well, that's like a different color. 3 Chevy does say that koi and goldfish are both in the carp family, which that makes sense. I caught a carp once. It was one of my first outings with my dad, and I caught a carp, and of course we couldn't eat it, but we ended up taking it home and putting it under some roses at the house. And let me tell you, the blooms that came off of that rose for like a couple of years afterward were just fantastic. Anyway. So yeah, here's some more. There's a orange and black one there. That's cool. Oh, here's ones that are kind of yellow. And then we got a orange, black, and white one, and there's the orange and black one. These ones are again, these things are huge, man. They're huge. It's in tank 28. And there's tank 27s. Okay, there's few more. Black and orange and all kinds of... Oh, there's one that's kind of spotted. You see this? This one's spotted like a leopard, but it has the orange head on it. That's pretty cool. Orange cap of some kind. I think you got one that's close by here that's orange and black that looks almost camouflage, like a digital camouflage, or what you would see, in the service with brown and green, etc. And there's the little ones. There we go with the tiny ones that are going to be. Now, I gotta ask 3 Chevy, and you can answer in the chat. Will these little ones grow to be like the big ones in your pond? Well, I mean, could you theoretically grow them and then sell them later? Or are they just like consistently stuck at sort of a smaller size because they're a different species? Anyway, there's the 2 in the blue basket that he was referencing. Yeah. So there's the 4 in the blue bucket that he was referencing in terms of that. So anyway, and this is these are the high fin sharks, I'm guessing. So. Oh, 3 Chevy says they grow to the size of the pond. So in other words, you would have to build like a bigger pond in order to do that. There's a thing for you. And they're sporting the American Perspective shirt. Check that out. There is 3 Chevy with his sharks. And it's outside by his pond, too. You can see the pond in the background with all of the wonderful stuff that's there. So, yeah. So that's cool. And I'm guessing that this is Mrs. 3 Chevy with her bring home stuff. She's wearing a Florida State shirt. So there we go. All right. And I think that's the end of it. Yeah. So that's the end of those. So now let's go and watch the video that was submitted. Whoops, wrong one. Watch the video that was submitted to us as well. Look at the size of these things. Gosh, these things are huge. What do you think they run, 3 Chevy? Like what, about 7 pounds, 10 pounds maybe? I don't know. I'm guessing. How big, how much weight do you think they are? Like if you were to hang them on a scale, if you were to hook them in a on a line, how big would that be? Anyway. Well, thank you for sharing with us your love of fish. Of course, everybody, all of the longtime Whiskey Warrior P1s love it as well. So anyway, so there you go. That's our pet of the week for this week. If you would like to have your pet of the week, your pet featured on Pet of the Week, all you need to do is send in your pet, picture, video, multiples, as you see, with, name, if you name them, any... Oh, 3 Chevy says he has no idea how much they weigh. But anyway, send in your pet with, name, breed, story behind it, whatever. And even if you want to give me artistic license to to create my own, I can certainly do that. But all you need to do is send all of that, attach it to an email, send it off to me at fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. Also, too, don't forget to hit those thumbs up buttons on your way out, thumbs up and like buttons on your way out at all of my platforms, whether it's X, Facebook, YouTube, and, of course, the aforementioned Rumble. If you haven't signed up for an account on Rumble yet, I encourage you to do so. Head on over to rumble.com. Get yourself an account. Once you are signed up and signed in, be certain to search up the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to get notified every time I go live. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.